So hi, hello everyone, and today I am with Siba again, and we are discussing now hopefully this very specific questions on PMP, and let's see what is in the store. Go ahead, Siba.
Hi. Okay, so I'm gonna go through a couple of questions that I had, and I posted them on the blog. So whoever wants to go through them, they can go. I mean, hopefully I'm gonna comment and
Okay,
the
okay.
answer. So there is one. It says the development phase of a new software product is near completion. A number of quality issues have increased the cost of building the product, but the project manager and team feel these costs will be inconsequential once the product gets to the market. The next phases are testing and implementation. The project is 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Which of the following processes should the project manager be most concerned with before moving into the next phase? So I originally I selected C instead of A, and I was what I was thinking is that even though this is a software project, it's working in a waterfall format, so we should be doing something in executing before going into testing and implementation, because it says that the next phases are testing and implementation. So that's why I selected manage communication instead of validate scope, which is the correct answer. The correct answer is validate scope. And I guess what they're trying to resonate is that, with each phase, you're supposed to be doing validate scope. But I didn't really see that. I didn't see the closed project or phase concept here. I saw that, this is just one whole project at once, and we're going from planning, executing to monitor
Okay.
and control.
So first, I would like to mention that the project development phases, like a software cycle phases, may not necessarily always link with process groups in PMBOK. So it's not like that when I'm doing implementation, I am into controlling or something. It is all executing. So whatever I have planned, and if I'm doing it, it is again the executing. Now, if the activities are about checking that how things are coming up, and according to that, I'm taking some action, then it has to do something with either quality or the scope. So if something has come up and I'm checking how things are going, so one of these two things are happening. Now, what I understand from the question is that the defects are discovered by the internal team or the external team. If it is discovered by the internal team, then better we pick up something related to the quality rather than validate scope. But if these issues are covered by the stakeholders, then you are doing validate scope. That's the one thing, doing part. Or if you want to show part of your deliverable to customers so that you get little more feedback and you feel more comfortable about how things are going, then also you go for a validate scope. Irrespective of software lifecycle or whatever developer lifecycle, the PMBOK does not talk about predictive or adaptive. Even in a predictive life cycle, where you might be following waterfall phases, you are expected to do validate scope along the way. Maybe it happens that if it's a 1-year project, in predictive life cycle, the validate scope starts after 7 months and it continues till the 12th month. In adaptive life cycle, the validate scope may get started in the 2nd month. So we have a different starting point, but putting it at the end is usually not visualized in PMBOK.
Okay. I'm gonna write this down.
Sure.
Waterfall and edge. Okay. So yeah, this one is this a good? So you're saying that this is a very legitimate question that they would ask in the PMP.
Now that is something is difficult to predict, Siba. So it's more like that you start visualizing that what kind of, so The one thing which I wanted to correct here is there is no communication discussion happening there. So whatever else might be there, but it's not to do about communication. So communication discussion can happen when you are thinking of that how do I create a common understanding among people, or there is someone out of track, you want to bring people on the same page. Then you can start thinking about communication. So it could be anything other than communication. So communication is not there.
Okay, so validate scope is something that that happens very frequently in a project. It doesn't just happen once, regardless if it's waterfall or agile.
That's a very valid way to look at PMP questions. Yes.
Okay.
And I do see many test takers doing this mistake. They think that validate scope will always happen at the end, and I don't have to do in between. Even if you are doing a small housework, it may happen. Then you select the samples, and the person shows you the samples. Though the delivery will happen later, but he takes, okay, samples has been delivered, and something is done. So it doesn't wait for everything gets done and says, okay, now you look at it and tell me, am I going right? To the external party. Internal party, definitely you keep doing. You ensure that you are going as per the project management plan, and your quality teams, your development team keep looking at against the project management plan. But you also go to the external people.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. We have so this question was the create WBS process identifies the deliverables at the blank level in the work breakdown structure, and the correct answer was the lowest. And I actually would think the highest because I thought the work breakdown structure takes the deliverables and then breaks it down. So that's what I went by.
So what I can say is that at least it won't be the lowest, because at the lowest level you do execution level work packages. Now it could be at a higher level, at a middle level. It all depends upon an approach you are taking for preparing a WBS. There is no unified approach. PMBOK can't mandate a way of doing it. It is recommended. It is recommended that you create a tree hierarchy of delivery, which is somewhere at the deliverables, so that you know that okay, something is completing. So at the lowest level, we have a work packages. Work package is something which is an executable work, which can be monitored, managed without confusion. So how granular the work package could be, it all depends upon the type of approach project management is taking, the type of control you want. So I agree with you. It cannot be the lowest level. Not necessarily level 1 or level 2. It will be too speculative to judge that.
Okay. Okay, got it. So it's not a very good question.
Yeah, it's not a good question. Yes.
Okay. Great. I love that. During the detail system design phase, the project manager realizes that a number of activities now need to be carried out in order to deliver a functional product. These activities were not part of the initial project scope. Carrying out these additional activities will have some cost and schedule implications. What is the best way forward? So some of the options was A, issue a change request, B, consult the change control board, C, consult the sponsor, D, find other workarounds. So the correct answer is issuing a change request instead of consulting the change control board. So my question here is that before you actually initiate or formally submit a change request, can you only consult with your team and key stakeholders, and who would you consult with, or can you consult with your sponsor, the change control board? Normally, like, who would you consult before you actually submit it?
Now, there's a little confusion about the change request in the contents. Many consider change request getting raised when all the amount of analysis has been done, and then you are raising it. Then you're putting it up for an approval. But in most of the project management softwares, whenever you discover something, start a note. You tell that this is something, this is a change request I get started with, And over a period of time, I will check that I will keep adding information to it. So it's like you raise a change request, so the change request actually follow a workflow. So raised, analyzed, approved, and it may have a multiple stages. So these stages are most probably there. So you raise it, you put an impact analysis, feasibility analysis, and then you put it for approval, and finally it get approved or reject. So these kind of stages must be there.
Mm-hmm.
So now, in general, in my opinion, I start with as soon as you get something, you may do it. Now, the thing which is missing in this particular question is you may want to refer your change management plan. Now, before it is not like anything happens and you issue the change report. It all depends upon how you have decided to manage change. In some of the project, the change management plan tells you that till the time this much variance, till the time you are consuming out of your own buffer, till the time you are consuming out of the reserved buffer or X buffer or Y buffer, you may not raise the change request. You can handle it. You can take your own judgment, and you are the one who decides. So as a project manager, I have that decision-making authority in some cases. Now, in this particular question, that option does not exist. So it's like, okay, so whenever something new happens, I acknowledge it. I look at my change management plan, and based on change management plan and based on the new thing, I may decide to directly go ahead with it, or I may realize that I need to raise a change request. Then I put an analysis to it, I collect feedbacks, and I make it ready for the change control board so that they can decide. Because I can't just take the raw information and to a change control board saying, what should I do? So because they expect me to be ready with it. Mm-hmm. So I reach a later stage.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Let me move on to the next question. Yeah, this one was a little bit interesting because I wasn't very sure which process it was in, and then it seems like it was using a tool of a different process. So you are conducting a requirements collection workshop and currently discussing a procurement process that needs to be digitized as part of your project. The project manager gives you the following information on the procurement process. If a procurement request only requires procuring materials, then the department issues a purchase order. On the other hand, if a procurement request requires procuring services, then the department has to negotiate a contract with the vendor. All purchase orders less than 10,000 in value can be authorized by the procurement manager. Purchase orders greater than 10,000 in value have to be authorized by the chief procurement officer. Similarly, for contracts less than 20.
Some more.
Yeah. So it goes on. It says, which of the following is the most suitable tool to document this process? Options are decision tree, use case, Pareto diagram, sensitivity diagram. So for this one, because I wasn't sure if it was risk, I wasn't sure if it was procurement or scope. So I selected I don't even remember what I selected, but the correct answer is decision tree.
Okay.
And it didn't really seem like a risk question to me.
Perfect. So look at this particular question and let's figure out which particular knowledge area is in action. Mm-hmm. Now, the question is trying to trap you under procurement knowledge area, whereas this question has nothing to do with the procurement. Procurement is just a software area. It could have been inventory, it could have been finance. So you may say that, okay, I need to raise a finance request, and these are the conditions, and these are the all things we want to capture. How do you capture this information? So what the question is trying to ask you, that there is a type of requirement. Mm-hmm. Which tool can help you to capture this type of requirement? Okay. Now we come further, and you can see various types of requirement. Usually, when you have conditions that when you do A, when you do B, then the C should happen, or it is a kind of a decision-making order. There are Usually, again, there is no right and wrong. Usually there are two formats which are used. One is like a matrix format. You call decision table. You have decision, you have an options. So you can, if the level of procurement is more than 10,000, then you talk about it impacts area A, it impacts area B, then this should happen. So you have a two dimensions, and in the two dimension you make a table, and in the third dimension where you put the content, where you write what should happen there. So there are two conditions here and here, row and column, and it tells you what should happen. That's a one way of presenting. The another way of presenting is a decision tree, when you have to make a decision. So you can call it like a rule, some rules needs to be captured. So use case is more to do with the interaction, detailed one, like what I will do, what goal I will achieve from the system. It's an overall system, not a particular logic. So it is more like a collecting and exploring requirement kind of question, that okay, how do you understand the requirement well, and which tool can help you in this context understand the requirement. So that's the question is all about.
But is normally a decision tree used for collecting requirements for a project?
Yes, you can use it to demonstrate the multiple paths. Okay, so decision tree is just a way of demonstrating multiple paths. It can be when you're calculating risk, then also you show multiple scenarios leading to an amount of risk. Similarly, when you are collecting the requirement, you can also show multiple paths, and you can say, in this condition you do this, in this condition you do that, in this condition you do that. Not necessarily you use a probability and all those things as a decision node. You have a decision nodes and options, and decision node could be just nodes. They not necessarily have a probability there. When the decision node starts having probability, it becomes more compatible with the risk.
Okay, got it. Got it. Okay, so if you see probability, then it's a risk question.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Let me just write it down. Okay, got it. So my next question is, you have recently deployed a new automation solution in your organization. The product launch has caused business KPIs to worsen. The procurement lead time that was averaging around 10 days per purchase has now gone up to 12 days per purchase order. Which of the following might be the root cause of this? And the options are misalignment of project goals with the business goal, poor product planning, initial learning curve of the users, defect in the product. So the correct answer is C. But when I referred back to the PMBOK, it said that so this is because an advancement in technology is supposed to lead to an initial learning curve, but the PMBOK mentions that the learning curve occurs when too many resources are added to an activity. So um, logically it makes sense if you have if you have an actual advancement in technology, but the PMBOK says something different.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Not different. The only thing is the amount of the content of PMBOK where you are reading the area where you are allocating people to a task to get it done. And what you are reading is that when you allocate someone who not done that work before, he end up spending time to learn it, and then only he will be able to do it. Now, this particular question is talking about a learning curve of someone else, the users. So saying that okay, you have taken the software to the end customer, and they are taking time. Now it could be other issues also, but the question is not giving any indication. So it's very difficult to guess that this is happening because of defects, and it's also very difficult to guess that this is happening because of misalignment between objective, because nothing that sort of thing is visible here. So it's safe to assume this all is happening because people have yet to master the new process, and they will take time, and after that they will be doing good.
Okay. So, but then which process would this fall in if it's not about estimating activity resources or I'm forgetting the actual name of it. Where would this fall into?
Okay, that's an interesting one. And since the context is like this, that you work and your deliverables are done and you are helping users to use the deliverables. So validate scope has been done and individuals are using it. So technically speaking, it's like a rollout phase. And it may happen that that rollout phase is part of your project because you are there. And after some time, you will get released because you need to hold for a while and you need to make the people use it. So this is the scenario it is coming in. So it's more about an implementation. So it's a part of a project management plan and you are doing manage work and all those things. So it's part of managing your work, doing your work.
Got it. Okay, I'm clearly going to be failing this test. So the next question, I noticed that the customer on a project tells the project manager they have run out of money to pay for the project. What should the project manager do first? And options are shift more of the work later in the schedule, close project or phase, stop work, release part of the project team. And there were a couple other questions about stopping work. For example, Mark has taken over a project that is beginning the construction phase of the product. He discovers that no work breakdown structure has been created. What choice represents the best course of action? And the options are: he should not manage this project, he should stop construction until the work breakdown structure has been created, he should consult the WBS dictionary, he should document this to senior management, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so I think there are two questions. Is that two questions or one?
No, these are actually, this was the second question.
Yeah. So let's take one by one.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. I just for some reason I've been grouping all of them together. If I think it's similar. So the first one, I think what my concern was that, it says that, okay, the customer has informed you that they've run out of money. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's ending the project. Like maybe there's a halt. And you have to wait until they provide more funds to recontinue the project. But in this situation, it says that no, you should just start the closed project or phase.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's a badly written question or that we should just assume that if the customers run out of money, the project's going to completely close.
Okay, so definitely it depends upon the options you have in the question. But in general, when you get an information that the customer is running out of money, the way we look in project management as per the PMBOK structure is, you are not worried about customers' money. You are more worried about your sponsor's money. So it may happen that your company may still want to do the project on credit, on debit or whatever. Yeah, because they see some strategic advantage out of it. So you are not looking at a customer for money, you are looking at your sponsor for money. So it's like this, the customer might have given an order to my company and my company project manager is working on it and customer tells me, okay, I don't have a money. Now it's up to me what I tell to my project manager, that should you continue or guys stop. This project is over because we don't get any money forward and let's stop this. So the decision is done by the sponsor rather than by the customer. So that's the way project management literature looks at it, because you have someone who is finally accountable for the delivery, who's a sponsor, because I am giving authority to project manager. Now that's the one thing. The another thing is, you don't do as a project manager anything like ad hoc. So means you get a request, even if sponsor tells you that, okay guys, close this. Assuming. So now the sponsor has called the project manager that guys close this. Now you can't just say, okay, this project is closed, everybody should go. Or you decide, oh, this project is lack of money, let us reduce the resources right now and allocate them to some other project for 1 month and then I will bring them back. So you as a project manager cannot take direct such calls. So you go through some process. So we in the options that which process is available. So jumping to the decision is not an option. So stopping work, releasing people is not an option. Closing project does not mean that you are taking the final decision. Closing project means you are following a process to consolidate everything and then move on to a next place, so that whenever you want to resume, you can resume from there. So even if you are closing a phase, you are saying that I am stopping here and this is the repository I am creating. Then I will come back and I will pick it again and I will move forward. Though the question is not giving direct indication what should happen. So it would have been betterly elaborated. But in a way, if you end up discovering this question in the real exam, then take an approach where you follow a process rather than you jump to the conclusion. So even if you want to do it later, you need to do a close phase. You are closing a current phase and then you will pick it up whenever you start again.
Got it. So basically, it's about closing a phase because the money has run out, and you're doing like the administrative closure, and anything that you close or whatever. No, not that. I was thinking about control procurement. So okay, so you're doing okay. Got it. So if somehow in this case it was a customer, not the sponsor, who's informing you that there is no funds, you can temporarily close the project, do the official formalities, and then if needed, you'll come back to it.
Sure, because when you come back, your people might be different, your requirement might be different. So you should know what has been done till now. Even project manager also could be different because we don't know when you come back and company may allocate you somewhere else. So you put things at a rest with a proper information, and that's the close phase. Or it could be a closed project also in some cases.
Okay, got it.
Now work breakdown structure. The second question. So where you were telling that you are jumping into the project and you realize there is no WBS, what do you do? Yeah, that was the question. Second one, more or less.
Yes. That was a question.
Yeah.
I just closed it. The WBS, so project manager, he's in a project and then he realizes that, they're in execution and WBS has not been created. So what does he close the project or at least halt the project until the WBS is created?
Yes. See, the way PMBOK or a project management looks at project planning, that you don't do anything without planning. Now, you might be doing 10 minutes of planning in a day, but you don't do anything without planning. So technically, you may halt for just for 1 hour and you may create a first level of WBS and then only you can get started. But in general, the project management literature will not believe that you do something where you don't have an idea what you are doing. Because not creating WBS means that you don't even know why you are doing something, how it relates to the deliverable, who has approved it, what are the specifications, what are the inputs, and what are the output, and you're doing something. So you don't do anything like that. So whenever you reach to a situation where you don't have a plan forward, you definitely stop and create plan first. And then only you move next. You just can't doing anything.
Okay.
That's how the approach is.
Okay. Makes sense. And the other one was it makes sense to me. It was about, if there's a contract and someone hasn't issued the seller hasn't issued a work plan to you, do you stop and file a work order? Stop work order. So that one made sense to me. I don't think we need to cover that, but these two, thank you for the explanation. The next question was, you are handling one software development project which is following the predictive methodology. You are starting a new phase where you will write code for the identified requirements. Which of the following process should you execute to start this new phase? There was identify stakeholder, identify risk, identify activities, plan quality. The correct answer was identify stakeholders. So whenever you're starting a new phase, what would you normally repeat? Which would you identify stakeholders or would you identify risk? And what is normally
if we see our initiating process group process, what all processes you see in process group?
Develop project charter and identify stakeholder.
That's it. So in general, if you see a diagram, you move from one phase to another phase. They will tell all the processes will get repeated. So means you have initiating, you have planning, you have executing, monitoring, and control, and closing in each phase. Now, whenever you move from one phase to another phase, you do start with identifying the stakeholders. let's take an example. You have been doing designing. Now, in a design, you might be taking input from 10 people who are architects and other stuff. When you start doing an executing, you may need to take input from people who are into doing job. Could be a production support guy, his input, user manual person, his input, and these guys might not be contributing in the previous phase. Similarly, when you go for deployment, now you have a customers and other segments and customers, DevOps people, release people, end users, all those stakeholders come into the picture. And those stakeholders may not be in picture when you are doing designing and development. So as you move from one phase to another phase in your project, you start with initiating process group. Okay, what we want to do here? Who are the players? And then you play with them and finally you close and then you move to the new game. So you do really end up identifying stakeholders when you move from one track to another track in the overall project.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you for that. My next question. So there were like and this is what's interesting because like I would go into the Rita and it had a bunch of questions after the stakeholder chapter, and you normally will go for the stakeholder answer, and this time I actually went and tried to critically analyze what the answers were. And it seemed that a lot of them said that, oh, you did not include functional management, and then that's why this activity is 2 days late. You did not there were a lot of changes, and that's because you did not identify some of the stakeholders. And then the what is it, schedule suddenly you hear the key stakeholder was not adequately engaged in the project, and that's why the whole project is getting canceled. So what I think I've boiled it down to is that the bosses often forget, or project manager often forgets to add the bosses to communication management, requirement gathering, and also risk management. Yeah. So one second. Let me. Hi, Eva. Can I actually call you?
Yeah, I muted you, so now you can speak again. I was not. Yeah. Okay.
So,
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the bosses, they should be added when it's coming to communication planning, requirement gathering, and risk management. When would you realize that a question is asking that, oh, a boss wasn't included, a stakeholder wasn't included, a manager wasn't included, that's why your project is suffering? How would you recognize that?
It's a guessing game, so there is no perfect way to do it. The idea here is that whenever you are getting late surprises and you feel that, oh, how could I miss it? And then the root of it is that you missed talking to someone. It means you have missed including a stakeholder. And in a complex project, this is a usual problem. We do validate scope, but we end up doing validate scope with someone who's going to use the product. And when you release the product, the other person is really using it and he says, this is not what I want. And then you realize, oh, but we did a validate scope. We have a signature. Yeah, whatever it is, but this is not what I want. I am the one who's going to use it. And then you say, okay, how could we avoid this in future? And then you realize, oh, I should have included the end user rather than just talking to the some representative of the users. So it's a guessing game. Judge the question based on that, and you may find this is a question of identify stakeholder. So mistakes done in identifying stakeholders, or how do you do an identification of stakeholders? So that is where it is rolling around. It's usually a good written process, because there are just two processes in initiating process group, and you get questions from initiating process group. So from an exam point of view, it's a good area to focus on, and it's little guessing game. Yeah, but whenever you get a hint, I prefer you think from an initiating, identifying stakeholder perspective.
Yeah, I think maybe here it's okay, you've I guess the clue is that, oh, everything's been going perfectly, and then all of a sudden there are these hurdles, or the product's not getting accepted, so maybe there was something that you forgot in initiating or
Definitely.
planning.
Sure.
Okay.
So something which got missed even in planning. That's a great point. I think you brought it in a very good way, that usually something missing from the planning itself. And then you realize what happened. We did everything as per the plan. How come? Then you realize that you missed planning something because nobody told you. How? Because we missed talking to the client.
Mm-hmm.
So something like
Got
that. And it could be in a communication planning, it could be in a risk planning, it could be in a requirement itself.
Got it. Okay. What was the other? Okay, so this one was more of a social response. So are they going to the PMP? Are they really going to be focusing on the first three chapter, or the role of the project manager, the environment, social responsibility? Are there going to be a lot of questions about those chapters, or do they usually skip on those?
So what we usually observe is that mixed with other knowledge areas. So you may have a situation which is of requirement, and you may see a conflict of requirement where the project manager feels that if I do this, my company can get money, and the stakeholder is not looking for it, but your boss wants it. What do you do? Something like that. So though they will mix up the situation of requirement and ethics. That is, do you really follow these ethics? Something like that.
Okay.
But don't worry too much about bribery and all those stuff. So there are so many practice tests which talks about those things. I don't see those kind of questions coming nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, because the question is, this one states that, you are staffing a project in another country. The project leader from that country has recommended a project team that consists of members of the project leader's family. Your first course of action should be inquiring if hiring through family lines is a common practice in the project leader's country, and the other option was, I'm just boiling it down to the two options, and then the next one was review the resumes of the individuals to see if they're qualified. That's what I picked, that you just review the resumes and see that, okay, if they're qualified, then regardless of their family member, you should just include them in the team, rather than, oh, like, should I look in a country and see it's a common practice to add to hire through family lines, because I've never heard of, I mean, yeah, but that seems unethical to me. So and the correct answer was hiring through family lines, if that's a common practice or not.
Yeah, see, again, this is little generic, and in general, it is based on how overall world look at the project management. And it's a generic view. There is no book which can say you should do, you should not do it. Now, it may see that you are favoring a person, the other person just have given you some set of resumes, and the person could have given you more, but he may only wanted to put his family member. So that, what do you do? Now, when you start reviewing it, that could be a second step. But first step is, since you came to know that there is a family thing and you become a little suspicious about it, better you validate that. Is it okay to do it? Once you say, yeah, this is something which is usual here, then you look at the resume. So first
That's
is,
so odd to me, though. Like, if you think about social responsibility, like, I get it. Like, some countries are, unevolved, and they still do that. And a lot of businesses, they fail because they include their family members instead of including someone who's qualified.
yeah,
So that's why I think it's, it should be unethical. That's why it still throws me off.
yeah. So again, this one is little difficult to judge what should you do. But in general, you if you sense that there is Because see, why this question is getting asked and why they are putting these family members and all those things. So they believe that there is something to do with this mess, and then about hiring the person. So the question itself gives you some smell that this is happening. What should you do? So it's a safe to say that I will check the practice rather than jumping. Okay, I will review the CV. You pick up the safe option, or like I will collect more information before I take decision. So it's like you are collecting. You are not saying that I will do it or not. If it says I will reject the idea, then it is like you are taking action. In general, I keep saying this three-step process. Whenever you get a question, the first option you should take is acknowledgement. I acknowledge this has happened. Then second option, I analyze, I collect more information. If you get that, pick up that. Finally, you act. So in general, in PMP exam, you usually get stuck into acknowledgement or analysis only. You hardly reach to an act stage. Because act stage requires a lot of detailed information. Like, what do you do is something is not that straightforward. So usually you will find acknowledge, analysis rather than action in the exam.
Okay, got it. What is oh yeah, so this was another issue. So there were two different questions, one that I saw probably in Rita and one that I saw in Crow, where it's like, okay, a project manager is walking into a meeting and then they realize that this report is inaccurate. Do they cancel the meeting, or do they tell the team members that, oh, let me please be patient and let me clarify this information from the team member who wrote this report or provided the data, and then I'll inform you. So I think in that situation, I think the way that I looked at it, or the way that I concluded, is that it's based on best option. So the best option, like you should get the information as accurately, get the information as fast as possible to the stakeholder. But if it's inaccurate, then you don't have to. Then you have to. It makes sense to cancel the meeting. Does that make sense? So like in one question it said that cancel the meeting, and the second question it said that halt the people and make them wait in a meeting. So in this sense, generically, like, should you just assume that if you have wrong information, should you try to wait until you get accurate information?
Now, see, it is little difficult. Yeah. So there are some meetings you can't cancel. There are situations. I can't say that. Depending upon question, you need to take a judgment. So people are there and they want to know what is going on. And if you don't have an information, at least you share what all information you have, so that they get some visibility and they also get some challenges. That's the one approach. Another approach is people want to know something and they were looking for detailed and exact information, and you are reserving their time. You come to know 1 or 2 days in advance that you are not ready for it, and they will feel wasting their time if they come without getting that information. Then better you cancel it, because you're still giving them time. So it's like, if there is still a time and you see the information which is present in the meeting is so critical that it has to be there, as the meeting is useless, then only you do cancellation. It's a bigger step. The only thing which you don't do is that you don't hide the information. You don't say that, okay, we don't have it. Somehow we make up something and don't let people realize that this information was missing. So that is a no-no. Now, canceling or going with an incomplete information, I think is a little more judgmental. You need to find some more clues in it. There are value in both, because if I am waiting, then better I get something. Customer is here to check what is happening, and since one of the report was not there, you don't want to tell him that, okay, we don't have anything for you and come tomorrow, something like that.
Okay, got it. So this was the other question. Project managers working on a complex project, and what is the role of the project manager in the procurement process? And I think I boiled it down to two of the options. One was the project manager should be the negotiator, and or the project manager should provide an understanding of risk of the project. So I selected the negotiator, but the correct answer was the project manager should provide an understanding of risks. So why is that the correct answer?
Sure. In a procurement process, as a project manager, is you are more focused on providing procurement scope of work and providing all those analysis which can make the vendor analyze the work and code for it. And you may also get involved in helping the procurement team to find out which option is right. Now, in many organizations, again, this question might not be giving the clear idea, but definitely procurement scope is your part, and risk, I believe, is part of the procurement scope, the way this question is looking at it. Now, negotiation, in majority of time, you can see some of the projects around you, you end up having a procurement team who takes care of raising the purchase order, releasing the payment and all. So they usually tell, okay, tell us which vendor you want. Finally, they get into the detailed negotiation and contract writing stage. Usually the project manager is not qualified enough to get into the contract and finalize how the payment should be done, and maybe not authorized enough also to do that. So in general, it is safe to assume that project manager is talking about what work I want to outsource, that is, and what kind of a risk, what kind of a consideration, what kind of a challenges vendor can face in that work. So that is my primary role.
Okay. Yeah, because what you're saying is that, in the PMBOK, it says the project manager and other members of the team may be present during negotiation to provide assistance as needed. The negotiation should be led by a member of the procurement team that has authority to sign contracts.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what was written. So great. So another question, it says that during project executing, the team member who is most experienced in programming informs you that he's accepted a new position at another company, given his 2 weeks notice. This is a major problem. What should you do first? And once again, the two options: create a workaround or look for unexpected effects of the problem. And the correct answer was workaround. And what they mentioned is that, looking for unexpected effects is secondary. You should first focus on fixing the actual problem. So that threw me off a little bit, because I thought that whenever you would get an unidentified risk, you would first do the analysis, and then you would, actually implement the solution.
I think so. That should be the right one. Because it's not necessarily always workaround. It could be a change request also, because even if it's unexpected, you may want to raise a change request for changing of a project schedule, or changing of the resource, or changing of the immediate timelines, because you need to absorb the learning curve and all those things. So it's not necessary that always you directly jump to a workaround. I do see many tests scenes that whenever the unidentified risk occurs, you need to do a workaround. So it is like by default you decide to do a workaround, but it's not necessarily true. When you are talking about people issues, you need to replace someone. You may not be able to just put a workaround, because the person was contributing, and I'm hoping everybody was busy. Now, if somebody is going out, you need to bring someone new. It's not that easy, or you need to adjust the time. So I think you need to analyze and then decide what to do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Let's see what the other question. This one, apparently it's been discussed ever since 2015. And so a project has several teams. Team C has repeatedly missed deadlines in the past. It's caused Team D to crash the critical path several times. As a team leader for Team D, you receive word that the next deadline may also be missed. You should meet with the project manager or alone, or the project manager and the leader of the opposite team, which is Team C. So, naturally, if I'm going through an exam, I would just think about conflict management, and I would be like, okay, first I should just talk with the project manager, and then the project manager will facilitate the discussion and then set up the meeting. But then the correct answer was project manager and leader of the opposite team. So you should be meeting with them. And then I was like thinking about it, and I was like, I think one of your instructors mentioned that, this is the wrong question. It should just be the project manager. But then I noticed that, the leader of the team of who has a concern, he was crashing the schedule or the critical path. And that in itself is like, taking initiation, which is what you should be doing first in in conflict management. And crashing means that, okay, you're probably initiating a change request. Change request doesn't have to always come from the project manager. It can come from, other stakeholders or team members. And then, crashing takes risk. It takes money. It probably, also affects time. So the team lead actually did take initiation, and then it makes sense for him to meet with the project manager, because he's escalating it to the project manager. That's how I rationalize the answer to this question.
Okay.
Like, am I correct in my thinking?
Okay. See, it is, in my view, I am not seeing all the details of the question, but in my view, team A leader, team B leader are in conflict, and one of them wants to talk to the project manager to resolve that conflict. So that is how the situation is. Now, in general, most of the conflict management theories, as well as PMBOK written theories, believes in conflict should be best resolved by the people who are inside the conflict, rather than by some external guy. So the best option could have been that team A leader directly talks to team B leader, even without involving project manager. That's the best one. If that is not available, then team A, team B, and project manager, all three talks together. That's the second best. Third best could be that, okay, I go and talk to the project manager and escalate the issue. Yeah, so it's like that open conflict management rather than, because see, when you are going alone, it is more like an escalation. You are raising your concern, then you are not doing conflict management, which is also a possible option in some cases. But if you are doing conflict management, then you better bring the other party in. Why to hide that? And brought the issues that, okay, this is what we are facing, this is what we have done, and this is the money we have paid. What can we do together?
Okay. Okay. Great. I noted that. Three more questions and I'll let you loose. So this was actually something that was from the PMI. This was the sample question. So it says a project manager meets with the project team to review lessons learned from previous projects, and what activity is the team involved? Answers were performance management, scope identification, risk identification, project team status meeting. And the correct answer was risk identification. I guess the way that I looked at it is that, if you're doing performance management, you're kind of trying to see the current status of the project. So you wouldn't really look at lessons learned. Project teams, same thing with project team status meeting, you're looking at the current status, so you wouldn't look at lessons learned. Scope identification, that's not necessarily a PMBOK term. It's more about defined scope. So that's how I eliminated that one, and that's why it should be risk identification. So am I correct in my thinking when I think that way?
Perfect. So what we are doing here is we are looking at organization assets. We are looking at organization lesson learned assets. So this is an input you are taking. Now, this input of these four options useful for identifying the scope. Yeah, because some of the project, if it is a related project, I can know what all challenges, what all things might be. And it is definitely useful for identifying risks, because I know what all risks were occurred there, and it can be taken here. So I feel these two are candidate for the second level of answer. Now we need to see what is the context. If you don't get any hint of customer requirement and you want to understand and analyze how you should implement it, so you can figure out that, okay, there's no scoping happening here. It is more like what we have learned from the previous project. Now, when you talk about what we have learned from the previous project, more about, okay, what risk occurred and what we mitigated and what kind of a risk we should consider when we are planning it again. So it is more like you are taking learning in account, and I believe that's risk becoming more candidate there.
Okay. So if you don't necessarily don't see something about requirements, it's not about scope, it's going to be more about risk. And yeah, it makes sense because in risk they do prompt list. They want to look at some. I've seen a lot of questions where they say that, oh, you should look at other projects where they or copy over the lessons learned or like their risk list. Okay, so that one I rationalized. Thank you. The stakeholder engagement plan is a component of the project management plan, and identifies the management strategies required to effectively engage stakeholders. Which of the following information is expected to be available in the stakeholder engagement plan? The options were organizational position of stakeholders, major requirements, scope and impact of change to stakeholders, stakeholder classification. And the correct answer was stakeholder classification. So in the PMBOK, it says that the stakeholder engagement plan is very broadly, it could be broadly framed or it's very specific. And I was normally what I thought was in the stakeholder engagement plan is how changes impact the stakeholder, what are the interrelationships, and the third one. I'm forgetting.
Sure.
Right.
So whatever you are saying,
the communication requirements. Sorry,
yeah.
Communication requirements. So I wasn't sure which one to pick because it wasn't really mentioned in the PMBOK.
Sure. So whatever you are saying, like communication need, risk impact, and all those things, they are kind of stakeholder classification. So you are trying to identify who is getting impacted by what. You are trying to, the classification metrics like the power and influence and power and interest and all those things is a classification. And you want to engage people as per their needs. So I see that the two of the options are kind of some of the dimensions of classification alone, because classification helps you to do those two options and maybe few more things. That's why it's a little safe to say classification. Yeah.
Because it combines all three of those
yes,
options.
Yeah, it could have a multiple more dimension as well.
It's not just change, how does the change of, okay, got it. Okay. Got it. And the last question, oh, never mind. Yeah, those were my questions so far.
Great.
So how did you know that I was going to be asking you questions? And the reason why is I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking, because why did you think that I was just going to be asking questions in this session?
Oh, just guess. Yeah, because in the previous session you were asking few, and since you sent an email, I was hoping that you might have a collection of questions, and then those are the questions you will ask to me. Just guess.
The reason why I'm asking is because like my husband, he's really good at taking tests, and he's always mentoring me. So like I was very nervous yesterday. I'm still nervous. Like I'm very anxious about this exam. And so he's like, oh, and I was like, I'm gonna fail. And he's like, no, if you feel that way, that means you're not gonna fail.
Yeah,
and I was like, what does that mean? And then so I'm thinking that maybe you've noticed a pattern in successful PMP takers, or whoever's passed it, you see patterns in them.
Sure.
And that's why you probably sense that, okay, if Siba's at this point of the stage, then she will be asking a lot of questions about the actual mock exam.
And that's also true. And even like last week, I had the conversation with the Varun, so you might see one of the video. He also messaged me today that he passed the exam. So yeah,
Oh, the guy with the glasses?
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay, great. Good for him.
Yeah. So I know. When you are really putting your effort, you are thinking about it, then it's not that difficult exam. Yeah, you do make
I'm very nervous because, the only time that I took exams was like 16 to 18 years. And that's my focus was completely different then. Like, you could give me any hard exam, I'll pass that. It's just like, I feel like I'm not in that mode and I feel like I'm going to fail because I'm
No,
not
no.
in
So it's a good opportunity to recalibrate a new mode. And I see many people who do PMP, they get motivated by the challenge rather than just the content. This exam and the challenge itself gives them a new dimensions, and many end up changing their track, and they end up doing better in their professional life because after a long time they went through this rigor. And then that bring the focus. And after the PMP exam, you will start feeling, what do I do with my time now? I don't have to do anything. And many end up starting investing their time in more and more learning, and that whole thing changes.
Okay. Okay, that's a good way of looking at it. No, thank you for your input. Yeah, I'm gonna get back into the books. Like,
Yeah, sure, Siba. And feel free, if you have any query, just drop me a mail. And best of luck for your exam. I'm sure you will do great. So
yeah,
yeah.
I'm so nervous. Okay,
Yeah.
can you come and just sit next to me and provide me all the answers?
Definitely. So if you remain focused and start thinking, okay, what probably a project management guy will answer it for this question, you will get it.
Okay.
So sometimes
I was just kidding about that.
sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good to make you out of the thinking process. Is okay if I'm not thinking. What if the project manager has to answer about it? Something a typical project manager who's a PMP certified has to answer about it rather than me. Then you may get the answer.
Okay. Okay. The input that you gave me today was super helpful. It's like it's new knowledge to me, so I'm gonna try to incorporate it. It makes me a little bit anxious that okay, if this is something that was completely new to me so late into the game, there are probably other questions which I have issues with, but I'll try my best. And
Sure.
we'll see what happens on the D-Day. But yeah, thank you so much for your
Thank you,
input.
Siba. Yeah, it was nice talking to you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.